Okay, students, this is where the video went totally haywire. I had to shut down my computer and everything, so I'm not sure what's going on. But hopefully I have the problem fixed. Of course, you're probably hoping that I don't, so that we don't have to finish the video. But all right, this is where we left off in the other video. Okay, is this a rectangle? Is this a rectangle? Well, ZX has a length of 12. So I know this entire length right here from Z all the way to X, this diagonal has a length of 12. Now this diagonal here so students, what I'm saying here is the length of ZX is 12. Now the other diagonal here, WY, has a length of 11.8. Now obviously that's close to 12, but it's not 12. So is this quadrilateral a rectangle? Well, remember, if we have a rectangle, then the diagonals are congruent. And are these diagonals congruent? No, not at all. So this is not a rectangle. No. All right, let's take a look at one more problem, or maybe two more problems. No, one more problem, and then a couple of notes, and we'll be done. Now I have a square here, and the square is square ABCD, and I want you to find the measure of angle X. The measure of angle X. Now, think about this for a second, please. If I have a square, that means all four sides are congruent, right? That's true. And if all four sides are congruent, then not only do I have a square, we can also call this a rhombus. Now maybe you never thought of that, but every square is also a rhombus. Because remember, if all four sides of a quadrilateral are congruent, then it's a rhombus. So yes, this is a square, but it's also a rhombus because all four sides are congruent. Are you with me so far on that? So if I have a rhombus, remember we learned a corollary that said the diagonals of a rhombus are perpendicular. So I know this angle right here is a right angle. So I'm trying to find this angle right here. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this triangle right here. And I'm going to pull it down here. And that's not the one I wanted to pull. Let's see if we can get this right. There we go. Now, I know this is X, and I know this is a right angle. But guess what else I know? Come on, students, think about this. Remember, if I have four right angles, and I do have four right angles, okay? If I have four right angles, then not only do I have a square, and this is also a rhombus, I also have a rectangle. This is a rectangle too. This problem really covers a lot. So Mr. Earhart, you're telling me when I have a square, it's a square and it's also a rhombus and it's also a rectangle? Yes. Every square is also a rectangle. Every square is also a rhombus. Because I have four congruent sides, that makes it a rhombus, and I have four right angles, that's the definition of a square, thus it's a rectangle. So if it's a rectangle, remember what we learned about rectangles? The diagonals are equal. The diagonals are equal. So if this diagonal here is congruent to this diagonal here, well then that means this length from A to E also has to be the same as the length from E to D. Okay, so what, Mr. Earhart? Well, then that means this side here is congruent to this side here. And what did we learn about a triangle that has two congruent sides? Whenever a triangle has two congruent sides, then their opposite angles are also congruent. We learned that a long time ago. In a triangle, when two sides are congruent, their opposite angles are congruent. So if this is X, then this is also X. So really what I have here is X plus, what is this angle here? 90 equals what? 180. When you add up all three angles, you get 180. X plus X is 2X plus 90 equals 180. Now bring the 90 over and make it negative. 180 minus 90 is 90. And now divide by 2. And x equals 45. So there we go. So we know this angle is 45. And that makes sense because this angle here is also 45. So 45 plus 90 gives you 180. And the answer to x is 45. Tough problem. Now, I want you to quickly write these three figures in your notes, please. Write these three figures in your notes, and I want you to write some things underneath them. First of all, I want you to notice that this is a square. But look what else it is. It is also I'm going to abbreviate it, but it's also a parallelogram. Look what else it is. It's also a rectangle. So I want you to see that a square is a parallelogram, a rectangle. It's also a rhombus. I'm going to prove that to you right now. A parallelogram means both sets of opposite sides are parallel. Check, we have that. A rectangle means you have a quadrilateral or parallelogram with 4 right angles. Check, we have that. A rhombus means we simply have a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides. Check. And a square means we have a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. Check. So this figure right here is a square and a parallelogram and a rectangle and a rhombus. Now let's come over here. Oh, it's also, I guess if you want to get picky, you could also call it a quadrilateral because it is a 4-sided figure. Okay, now this is a rectangle. But what else is it? Well, it's also a parallelogram, and it's also a quadrilateral, and that's it. It's not a square. Well, a square's got to have 4 congruent sides. Is it a rhombus? A rhombus has to have 4 congruent sides. We know it's a parallelogram because both sets of opposite sides are parallel, and we know it's a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. Okay, now this is a rhombus. And if this is a rhombus, then I also know that it's a parallelogram. And I also know that it's a quadrilateral. There's no way it's a square. A square has to have 4 right angles. And it doesn't have 4 right angles. There's no way it's a rectangle. A rectangle has to have 4 right angles also, and it doesn't. But it is a rhombus because it has 4 congruent sides. It is a parallelogram, and it is a quadrilateral. So there we go. So I wanted to kind of break down and show you that some of these figures have more than one name. And I'm not going to necessarily quiz you on this and make you list these out, but you need to be familiar with it. You need to know that, okay? All right, now here's what I want you to do. I want you to write each one of these just 2 times. That's it. And this is due by tomorrow. This is a homework assignment. I will collect this. If you don't do it, I email your parents, okay? This is due by tomorrow. Write each one 2 times. I hope that you have a great rest of the day. I warned you it'd be a long video. The good news is there's no notes tomorrow, just homework tomorrow. Have a great rest of the day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.